We're on.
Okay.
Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Commissioner Kaczynski?
Here.
Commissioner Talley?
Here.
Commissioner Wu?
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Crandall?
Here.
Vice Chair Blackwell?
Here.
Chair Rowland?
Here. Next item, special orders of business. We have none. Next item is the minutes. We have 5 minutes to approve. First, the minutes from the adjourned regular study session meeting of September 4th. Are there any proposed changes or a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes from the adjourned regular study session of the meeting of September 4th, 2019.
Can't do that.
I can make a motion.
Right there.
What's it?
I'll second.
Motion by Jason, second by Don. All approve, all in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
I have to abstain.
So 601. Jason abstained. Did you abstain as well? I'm sorry. 502. The next minutes from the regular Planning Commission meeting of September 4th, 2019.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular Planning Commission meeting of September 4th, 2019.
Second.
Motion by Jason, second by Dawn. All in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
And same two abstentions. The minutes from the adjourned regular Planning Commission meeting of October 2nd, continued from October 16th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the adjourned regular Planning Commission meeting of October 2nd, 2019.
Second.
Moved by Jason, second by Michael. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain.
And Dawn and Jason abstained. And, and Bart abstained. Minutes from the regular study session of October 16th, 2019.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular study session meeting on October 16th, 2019.
Second.
Motion by Jason, second by Dawn. All in favor?
Aye.
And
Abstain.
Bart abstained, Jim abstained, and,
This part.
okay.
It's the two of us.
And finally, the minutes from the regular Planning Commission meeting of October 16th.
I'm sorry.
Sure. It's all right.
So, I think I might be missing, I'm missing D.
Study just did D.
We just did D, that was motion,
I don't have a copy of it.
Oh, would you like
That's
mine?
what I'm saying.
that was motion by Jason, second by Dawn. And
Second by Michael.
for D? Okay, I'm sorry, second by Michael for D.
And it was John Brown that made this, sorry.
I made
You again?
motions. I made-
Yeah,
Who did?
Jason's made all the motions, actually.
I'm on a roll.
Okay, and then it was,
Bart,
Randall and Roland.
kind of roll and abstain, right?
Thank you.
And then we finally have the minutes of the regular Planning Commission meeting of October 16th.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the regular Planning Commission meeting of October 16th, 2019.
Second.
Motion by Jason, second by Don, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain, Bart and Jim. So 502. All right, oral and written communications. Members of the public may address the commission on matters of public interest which pertain to the city and are not otherwise on the agenda. If you wish to speak, please step forward to the microphone, and if you desire, state your name and/or city of residence for the record and make your presentations. Please limit your presentations to 3 minutes. I have 3 cards. As a reminder, this is for items that are not currently on the agenda. The first card I have is for Jeff Perkin. Thank you.
Hello, Planning Commission. So I'm here to talk about the small cell wireless facilities that are currently being approved or applications are in process. So as far as I know, 5 have been approved with another 10 in the application process, which will be 15 new cell towers in our community when all is said and done, if those go forward, which I hope that they don't go forward. And I'm grateful that you've already kind of delayed a couple of them, which I think is really wise, considering that at this point, hundreds of scientists and doctors around the world have been saying how harmful this radio frequency radiation is to human health and to all biological life. I know that they're saying that these particular installations are going to be for 4G, but they're going to be using the same setup on light poles that is being rolled out in other areas for 5G currently. So obviously it's a wolf in sheep's clothing, and they're going to easily be able to upgrade it to 5G. And according to the government's own research, a 10-year, $30 million study by the National Toxicology Program, they already found that 2G and 3G caused cancerous tumors in rats, and that coincides well with the obvious uptick in cancer rates in our society as we've been getting more and more proliferation of these cellular devices at just, I mean, I'm sure you guys understand, a shocking rate without really understanding the health effects. I don't think any kid or teenager walking around on their phone all day is either concerned or understands what they are potentially doing to their health. And a lot of independent studies, thousands of them, have shown that they're not doing anything good. A good quote from a neurosurgeon named Dr. Jack Cruz is, "I never thought I'd say this in my life, but mobile phones are probably worse than cigarettes for overall health." Obviously, everyone knows that cigarettes are extremely bad for our health, and we have the choice to decide whether to buy cigarettes and smoke them or not. But when we're talking about installing these small cell facilities within 100 feet currently of people's homes, 58 feet from her daughter's bedroom window, whether or not her daughter chooses to use a cell phone, she's going to have to sleep. She's going to have to be in her room in that extreme close proximity if we go forward with that proposal, which you guys have denied so far, which I say is awesome. And then as far as the draft ordinance, I think we need to get much stronger in our language as far as restricting these things. Make it possible for them to exempt it like Encinitas has, but the law is going to be changing. There's many states are involved in a lawsuit against the FCC, which is a captured agency according to Harvard University.
Thank you.
Here's
The next card I have is Courtney Morrow.
No, the next one is, yeah. Good evening. My name's Courtney Morrow. I'm a resident of San Clemente. Last Friday, I emailed you about the updated ordinance passed unanimously by the Encinitas City Council on Wednesday, October 30th. They already had put in place an urgency ordinance, and they have since gone and updated that policy to further protect their residents. Encinitas is a city that mirrors our small coastal town, both in population, topography, as well as physical size. It's 19 square miles, very similar to ours. And their small wireless facility ordinance would be an excellent choice to model our ordinance after. They have chosen leadership that protects their entire community to the fullest extent possible of the law, to include their flora, fauna, human life, particularly children, and ADA-protected individuals. That's an important point because currently we're only looking at ADA from a mobility standpoint, but not necessarily from a disability standpoint, and what that would impose on that population if they were to live within close proximity to these cell sites, and what kind of health hazards that would have for that protected class. It also protects their wildlife and mitigates the dangers that these antennas pose near CAL FIRE, very severe high fire hazard zones, when it comes to establishing parameters around the deployment of 4G and 5G antennas throughout the city. I personally believe in your capacity as our leaders to do the same for all of us here in San Clemente. I urge you all to please watch the video and read that ordinance that they have unanimously approved by their council. Their attorney does a wonderful job outlining the FCC orders and breaking down the specific updates to the city ordinance that further protects local independence and ensures safety for the citizens to the fullest extent possible, using a flexible policy approach to adapt to the legislative turmoil that the FCC has foisted upon local governments. The following changes that they included in their recent update to the ordinance were the direct result of public input provided at their city workshop regarding the deployment of these small wireless facilities. And I'm happy to hear that our city is taking the same step to solicit greater public input and transparency in the process. Lastly, I'm really looking forward to the city to publish our draft ordinance as it currently stands for public review, and again, increase transparency in preparation for the city's scheduled workshop for small wireless facilities in the public right-of-way on Wednesday, November 20th. This will help facilitate an open forum for public input based on the current draft as it stands going into that meeting. Without it, the public would be at a great disadvantage to meaningfully participate in an informed capacity. And based on my research of the FCC, there is nothing that would preclude the city from doing so. So I've been told it should go on the website tomorrow, and or on Friday, by Friday. So I'm hoping that still remains to be the case. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next card is James Nelson. And this is I beg your pardon. Yeah, James, why don't you go ahead? After James, I have Laura Fisher.
Perfect. So, good evening. My name is Jim Nelson. I'm a San Clemente resident for 17 years. I'm also here for the small cell sites to express my opinion and hopefully appeal to your, help us protect our citizens and our neighbors from these sites and the location. A couple things as far as with the ordinance. One thing that I really think is important is that we have a minimum of 500 feet from the residential lot line. I think there's some other things being proposed as far as maybe 100 feet from a structure, but I think the 500 foot is acceptable, and I think other cities have done the same thing. And I think if we're going to do an ordinance, we should do it with the intent to set something within an acceptable range, so we don't keep fighting this fight every time that there's a cell site proposed. The other thing is, I really hope that you guys take into consideration including the 2 cell sites that are under appeal in the city ordinance, because that is obviously very important to us. One of the sites is in close proximity to my house, and the next speaker, Laura, you'll hear it's incredibly close to her home. So, I hope that is the case. I'm not sure logistically, but I certainly hope that we can include that and make it work for everybody. That's it. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. And Laura Fisher. And this is the last card I have. If anybody else wants to speak to something that's not on the agenda, please hand in a card to Eileen.
Good evening. I'm Laura Fisher, representing Safe Cell Sites for SC. This is a picture from my daughter's bedroom window, 58 feet from one of the appealed cell sites. I wanted to talk about 2 things tonight. One is we wanted to make the city aware that AT&T started the underground work for the 2 cell sites under appeal this summer. In July, an encroachment permit was pulled for minor work within the right-of-way on Camino Veracruz outside the reserve, but the address was instead listed differently. The handhold pictured here from the application was installed, and we wonder why AT&T continues to fight for this particular site and not others. They have already started the work. The scenario is the same at the other appealed site on Calle del Cerro. The next thing I wanted to talk about is we are requesting that the city please pay attention to the height of the 2 cell sites under appeal. The city's conclusion of consistent in character and similar in height to other streetlights and traffic light poles, and not a visually dominant feature, needs to be challenged. Aesthetically obtrusive needs to serve as the proxy for the decrease in home values and not potential health effects. The two sites under appeal should be rejected based on the height aesthetics. Here's a picture from the application, which is similar to both sites. There's a 19% height increase from the top of the pole to the top of the antenna. This measures 5 foot 6 inches. This is how high the antenna will appear when you're driving down the street. The permit analysis states that the height increase is only 4 foot 2 inches. And AT&T states in their appeal that, again, the height increase is 5 foot 6 inches. The city's new small cell draft ordinance repeatedly limits the height increase of a pole to 10%. AT&T requested in this meeting the new ordinance to allow a height increase up to 6 feet. Why is a 19% increase okay for the proposed site, but in the future we're only going to specify 10%? To provide the city more clarity, I've included other calculations in your packet. The change in height is different between northeast and southeast elevations, and if you're looking at the top of the pole versus the top of the luminaire. We're requesting a memo be sent to the city council members who are going to be voting on this item on November 19th. The site is aesthetically different than surrounding infrastructure. Please encourage denial of this site instead of additional tolling of the site. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's the last card I have. Does anyone else wish to speak tonight on something that is not on the agenda? Then we will move on to our next item, consent calendar. We have no items on the consent calendar. And item 8, public hearings. The public hearing process includes a staff presentation, a presentation by the applicant not to exceed 10 minutes, and public testimony. To facilitate the meeting for all attendees, the public is asked to limit their individual presentation to 3 minutes. Following closure of the public hearing, the Planning Commission will respond to questions raised during the hearing, discuss the issues, and act upon the matter by motion. In our first public hearing item tonight is 212 South Calle, Seville, cultural heritage permit, minor exception permit, sidewalk waiver for the Walter remodel. So, Jonathan, you want to kick us off?
Yes, I would. Good evening, Planning Commission. We have in front of you tonight an existing duplex that's proposing a remodel and an addition at 212 South Calle, Seville. On the screen is the vicinity map showing the location of that property at the nexus of a few streets, Avenida Victoria, Seville, and Avenida Santa Barbara. It's within the residential high zone and also within the coastal zone overlay. The lot itself is 4,784 square feet. And the purpose of the review tonight is that the addition is larger than 500 square feet and abuts the historic property with the red house there at 210 Calle, Seville. This is an image of the existing site as viewed from Avenida Santa Barbara. Again, it's an existing duplex, so the stairwell that you see there is the access to Unit B. And Unit A is accessed from South Calle, Seville. The proposed project involves the conversion of this duplex into a Spanish colonial style architecture, remodeling the first floor of Unit B and adding a second story addition. There will be an expanded kitchen on that ground floor and 2 new bedrooms on the second level. Unit A, the floor area of that unit will not be changing. The garage currently is attached to the building, but there's no internal connection, and there's some modifications that are proposed. They are looking at doing extending the back side of that garage further into the slope and pushing the front doors of the garage back further to allow for a little bit of an increase in the driveway area. There's also some additional storage accessory space in the garage. And new landscaping and retaining walls are also going to be a part of this project. So looking at the required entitlements, there's the cultural heritage permit, again required because there's a proposed addition of over 500 square feet adjacent to a historic property. The purpose of that review is to consider whether or not the project negatively impacts the abutting historic resource. And the other entitlement in question is a minor exception permit, which is to allow for an arbor and walls over 42 inches in height that are within the front and or side yard setback areas. There is a sidewalk waiver that was considered as a part of this project that was reviewed through the Public Works Department and approved by the city manager. The photo on this slide indicates that historic property. That is the trigger for this review, 210 South Calle, Seville. It was constructed or permitted in 1927. The architect is unknown. Rendering here indicates what we would be looking at with a build out of the proposed project. And so the second story element is behind, but again, returning to the front, there's stylistically a complete change in the design of the residence. And so the new look to this duplex would have pergolas over the front entry here and a tiered roofing that steps away from the street frontage here on South Calle, Seville. The rendering here is from Avenue de Santa Barbara, and you can see where the openings are for those garage doors. That is the location of the current garage doors, but they've provided additional space there where the new face of garage door is pushed back about an additional 5 feet, and so those are openings now before you get to the garage door. And there's a doorway access and stairwell from the garage door area that's proposed. The patio that is there is existing, and again, it's just providing the thicker stucco columns there, and then the extended chimney element that protrudes up to the second floor balcony area. Again, there is an existing stairwell that accesses Unit B on this side, but that's elaborated with the turreted entry here. And obviously there's a variety of other architectural features, including the rounded arched openings and windows. Just a few of the details that we're zooming into that scale. So adding some Spanish colonial light fixtures, and the two images on the right are comparable to features that are seen at Casa Romantica that would be incorporated into the building. Providing some clarity on the minor exception request, the staff report reviewed, there's 3 different pieces to that. So one of them is a retaining wall that is indicated on the left side of the screen here. And that retaining wall is going to be at parts exceeding 42 inches to allow for the construction of the new sidewalk at that location. The second item is a new arbor that would be at 7'6" and that is at the top of the screen and falls within the front yard setback. It's permitted with a minor exception permit. And then finally, maintaining some existing landscaping or hedges that are above 42 inches is one of the requests. And I did highlight in blue an area of concern that engineering highlighted with some concern over line of sight in that area, and so they were recommending maintaining a lower height for that existing hedgerow to be consistent with our typical 42-inch height standard. That's contained within condition of approval 5.10. Landscape plan is shown here. Obviously, this is a busy screen. This is more just for reference, and but 3 different pieces I highlighted on the left is that there are several existing trees, including magnolia, a plum, and several or 2 different groupings of king palm trees. The proposed new plantings are predominantly native and drought-tolerant species. I zoomed in just to highlight again that portion of sidewalk, since that was a point of interest. The blue color there is the newly created sidewalk. The lighter purple color is what is the waved portion of that sidewalk. So one of the things that I did want to propose or look at this evening is amending the resolution to specifically indicate that the 2 pieces that the Planning Commission is approving would be the cultural heritage permit and the minor exception permit. That's not to say that you cannot discuss the sidewalk, but that action on that waiver piece falls under the city manager's discretion, and that has been taken. However, that's still certainly something that can be a part of discussion. But I just want to be clear for the purposes of what we've noticed and what the actionable item is on that permit, that is something that is not a part of the decision. In summary, there's one comment letter that has been distributed to everyone from the neighbor at 210 South Seville, and it was just requesting caution and concern over construction, that while this project, should it be approved, is under construction, that appropriate measures are taken to protect the historic residents from any damage during the construction process. The proposed addition and remodel is in scale and character with development in the residential high zone, significantly lower than the allowed height within that zone, consistent with general plan requirements and the intent for that zone. Design Review did review this project back in March 13th of 2019 and was supportive of the design at this location. And staff does support the project as conditioned. So, concluding, staff does recommend that the Planning Commission determine the project to be categorically exempt from the requirements of CEQA pursuant to CEQA Section 15301 for existing facilities, and adopt Resolution PC 19038 approving both the cultural heritage permit and minor exception permit in front of you. I'm available for question, as are the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Walter.
Okay, thank you very much. Jason, you have a question for staff?
Yeah, I've got two questions. The first is, this is just under a 1,200 square foot addition, right? So why wouldn't that qualify under the ADU ordinance, right? Because we're talking about two separate entities here with separate entries. I was just thinking about that in respects to the ADU.
Yeah, like, or how that would come into play. So it's an existing duplex already, for one. But would it be eligible for, would a project, would you mind clarifying the question a little bit?
So if I, and I'm sorry for asking, but if I remember from our discussions about the ADU ordinance, that trumps a lot of the issues that we're talking about, especially as respects to historic structures and some of the other kind of things that we try to be sensitive to here.
Sure.
And so I'm just curious why this didn't go through the ADU process, because I believe it's for new ADUs and also for renovating ADUs that were there, if memory serves, and I may be sketchy on that, that it seems like that would have been a process that could have been utilized that would have.
Sure. So, yeah, I can respond, at least tentative, like, it's a two-part response.
Right.
Currently, no, because the current state legislation and our current ordinance only allows for ADUs to be created on lots that contain a single-family residence. And so the existing situation with a duplex, you'd have to hop through the hoops to convert that to a single-family residence, and then move in the direction of creating an ADU to meet by the current standards.
Okay.
Future standards, there is some deviation, and that'll be something that's discussed at Planning Commission coming up. But there is some provision for ADUs even at duplexes, not just single-family residences. So there would be a process starting January 1st for someone who has a duplex to consider adding an ADU.
Obviously, all the work's coming into it, and it, so we're here, right? But I'm just thinking about it in the future. And so then my second question is relating to the sidewalk waiver that has already been granted, right? And that was granted some time ago?
So I believe, yeah, so April.
April, right.
And I will defer questions on that to Zach from our Public Works Division, just because that's something that is processed outside of my realm in planning.
Okay, and so maybe this is just a question for council then. The sidewalk waiver has been granted, and I assume it has the same review period as other actions that may be taken from an appeal standpoint. So that was done in April, so that ship has long since sailed, correct?
Correct. Okay. Specific to the sidewalk waiver.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Don?
Yeah, but I think as a discretionary body, we can still discuss sidewalks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Because this, I do have a concern. I raised it to staff separately yesterday. That's why this ordinance is here tonight, because this whole neighborhood is severely lacking in a lot of sidewalks. In fact, the specific street we're looking at on the right side, you can't see, there is no sidewalks. Then there's gaps up there going to the corner, and then it stops going down the street, and then of the five streets that meet there, 3 of them don't have adequate sidewalks or regulation sidewalks. So we're in a dearth of sidewalk area. So you have neither sidewalks on either side of Santa Barbara. You're missing one side on the Victoria and on both sides of the intersection. So I do have a concern on why this exception was granted, and why I looked at the terrain down there and I could see where you could put a sidewalk in and make it continuous.
So let's cover that in discussion. And
But anyway, I wanted to
questions.
ask staff here to come up and
Okay, great.
discuss the situation.
Good evening, Zach Ponson with the Public Works Department. So yes, the applicants applied for the sidewalk waiver earlier this year. The staff report on that was prepared in April of 2019. The waiver was granted due to one of our allowed exceptions, which is topography. So in this case, a retaining wall higher than 3 feet would have been required in that approximate 35-foot section of their frontage that if you put a wall directly behind that sidewalk, would have required a wall higher than 3 feet. So that's one of our criteria, and since it met that, staff doesn't have the ability to start asking them to trim back their slope, and that's not in our current code and in our current policy that council's approved.
Although they are putting a retaining wall in the other section of it, correct?
Correct. So in areas where they have to put in a wall up to 3 feet, they are putting it in, and one of my understanding is part of their exception is tonight that they're choosing to move the wall back a little bit away from the sidewalk so that they can put some landscaping in between. And in those areas, you actually are getting higher than 3 feet simply by the choice of the cosmetics of trying to put some landscaping in front of the wall. If you just have sidewalk and a wall, those other areas didn't qualify for the waiver since we would have actually allowed them to put the wall in the right-of-way in order to get sidewalk. But part of their exception is to in those other areas is to create a wall higher than 3 feet, but that's mostly due to the cosmetics of adding some landscaping in front of the wall. So the further back you get away from the sidewalk, the higher that wall gets.
So this is a fairly dangerous intersection, this five-way street combination. There's been several bicycle accidents at it, and severe accidents there, and so being a safety concern, I am concerned about the waiver of the sidewalk gap here of some 35 feet, so maybe it's worthy of discussion later on, but when I walked the neighborhood down there and walked the turf, it seemed to me like this area needs attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Zen?
Yes, I need the staff or the council to clarify the procedure on the sidewalk waiver. We had the project on La Cuesta. I think I believe it's next to the historic Goldschmidt House. It came to the planning commission, was denied. The applicant was able to go to city manager again, was denied. The applicant appealed to the city council, was denied. The second case is on the street that's only 2 blocks from Pier. It was also because of a topographic issue. They asked for a sidewalk waiver. We granted it. Then this is the third case. At the time, I was told by the staff, by the former interim city planner, that because there's a discretionary review, the sidewalk will be reviewed together with the rest of the project. Here, the city manager went ahead and approved it. Do we change our policy? Can you clarify what is the correct policy procedure on that?
And thank you. You actually asked a good question. But and what the policy is, and it's been this way since 2013, and it's been similar even before that, the discretion is always actually up to the city manager whether or not we install the sidewalk and or grant a waiver. The code and our council adopted policy refers to, in the event that there's not enough right-of-way. For example, on La Cuesta, there was only about 2 feet of right-of-way behind the sidewalk. We can request a condition of approval for them to grant an easement for that sidewalk. And so whenever we're coming forward to you, we're actually typically have a condition of approval that outlines sidewalk is or is not being installed. And in many cases, we'll state what the right-of-way is, and we're basically telling you, yes, we're asking for a condition that says that you're going to require sidewalk from an applicant, or a sidewalk easement, excuse me, from an applicant. So truly, the discretionary body, per our code and per our council adopted policy, is really only looking at whether or not you're going to okay a condition of approval that requests an easement for a sidewalk. The actual waiver process per our code and our policy goes to the city manager. And so we try to word that condition of approval to summarize that. So in some cases, La Cuesta, for example, the applicant tried to circumnavigate it a little bit by asking the Planning Commission to hereby not include that condition of approval. Therefore, it would have killed the sidewalk, because we wouldn't have had the easement. So therefore, on that night, you technically did have a choice, because that applicant brought it up and said, please remove this condition of approval. Not too many applicants do that. That's why you only seen this a couple times. Most every other project you see has a condition that says, for example, sidewalk is being required along the frontage, the right-of-way is 10 feet back, therefore an easement is not being requested, therefore there's no standard condition. So we're outlining that in our condition of approval, and it's usually in almost every project that comes towards you. And it's very rare that an applicant comes forward and says, please remove this condition of approval, similar to La Cuesta.
Okay, well, thank you for clarification. So on this particular project, the waiver is about 35 feet a segment of the sidewalk.
Correct.
Does the city manager waive the requirement for the easement up and around the curb cut?
For the curb cut for the drive approach. In this case, it wasn't drafted into the waiver process, not being discretionary at the time, so it's a little bit of a curveball. But this would have been one that would also get a waiver due to how short the driveway is and due to topographic issues between the street and the driveway would have resulted in an awkward, too steep driveway.
Does the city manager waive that easement requirement?
With the city manager doesn't waive the easement requirement. The city manager waives sidewalk along certain portions of the frontage.
Is the requirement to grant the easement up and around the curb cut part of the condition of this project?
We didn't make it part of this condition. Since we did go through the process of the waiver didn't address the up and around the drive approach, but staff did not include that condition because knowing the criteria, it pretty much meets two of the criteria, so we didn't include it. You very well could add it tonight as a condition that you would like an easement around the drive approach, unless waived by the city manager, and we could technically go through another waiver for that portion.
Well, we'll consider it, but since it's asked by the code, it says the easement should be part of the condition. What's the reason not to include it?
And that's why we originally drafted this agenda report with the quote sidewalk waiver with it, but
that's a separate issue.
Correct.
The sidewalk waiver is a separate issue from the easement up around the curb cut. They're related, but they're separate.
Correct. I mean, so I guess what you're saying is we're not looking at the 35-foot section.
Right.
We're looking at just the up and around the drive approach.
Yes.
And in this case, we're not recommending a condition of approval to do that due to the fact that the guy's driveway door is, I think, 10 feet from the street. You couldn't park a car there. If you're going up and around, the grades wouldn't work. You can't make it 2% towards the street. It really would have required tearing down that portion of the house, which
Well, you cannot
staff
park the
wouldn't.
car. You cannot park the car there anyway.
Correct, but you also couldn't make it ADA compliant with the 2% cross slope either, so staff didn't include that as a condition of approval.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Chris, questions?
Jonathan, I have a quick question for you. I heard that the driveway is only 10 feet. Is that in the current state? Because it looks like on the picture, it's bigger than 10 feet on the existing picture.
Yeah, so I'm just going to jump real quick to our the development standards table here because I pulled this directly from the plan. So if you'll reference the plans, the garage is the current face of garage is right about 5 feet, and then what is proposed is pushing that back an additional 5 feet. So the proposed garage face now would be 10 feet setback.
So it's going back.
Correct. So they're the back side of the garage. They're going to do some additional excavating to push that further back to try to increase a little more space of that driveway.
So so currently, this picture right here, how long is the driveway?
Oh, let me.
To the front door of the garage?
Yeah. Let me jump to the photo so I can be looking the same with everyone. So from the property line, it's 5 feet, and that's part of where, so I don't have the measurement from the curb. From the property line, it's 5 feet. I believe that the Santa Barbara right-of-way is 5 feet also. So from the curb, currently it's 10 feet. And then with the additional 5-foot pushback, then the face of the garage will be 15 feet from
Okay.
curb.
Okay,
10 feet from property line.
okay, thank you. It looked like it was going the other way.
Yes, it's going further back. So where you see the garage face now, that's going to be the open arched enclosure.
Thank you.
Don?
Yeah, now I have a concern. Now you're going to push the back of the garage also back another 5 feet?
Correct.
Now, is there a possibility if soil's been done, engineering looked at this for potential impact to the historic structure?
So not specifically to the historic structure at this point, so soils reports are something that's required with the building permit process, so they would be doing the full evaluation of the soils information at that time when the
But engineering
construction
analysis
documents.
so far is agreeable to pushing this whole garage structure back 5 feet?
Do you mind if I defer to Zach on that question?
Because let's look at the plans here and how far now we are pushing back towards the historic structure.
Technically, this will be actually under the building official's direction in the building department. Engineering probably actually won't even have a grading plan on the site since it's all a remodel. But, I don't want to speak for him, but typically, if there's a shoring required, then he'll require it type of thing. And so they will look at that during the formal plan check process. It's my understanding, but it will be under the building department.
Just, for the record, Ms. Meredith here is concerned about the letter we got on the dais here is concerned about any impact. I mean, she loves the neighbors, supports the project, but is concerned about structural damage to her 92-year-old home. And with that garage going back, raises a kind of a red flag for me as well.
I mean, yeah, that'll be
Call my
something.
engineering friend to the table here.
As much as I want to get involved in it, but it will be the building official that will be looking at that. And something like that, if they're undercutting a footing or a surcharge of a load like that, it typically results in shoring being installed. And those contractors are very aware of litigation and type of things from neighbors, so they usually have monitoring devices or crack monitoring going on, and pretty careful about how they excavate underneath people's houses. So that's usually a means and methods of the contractor, but usually brought up also during the building department review.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions of staff? All right, then I'll invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to address the planning commission if they wish.
Unless you have any specific questions.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? I don't see
I might, I'm Lisa Walter.
So could you step up to the podium, please?
No, you're okay. Just because they recorded the meeting, so you can speak.
I'm Lisa Walter, and with my husband John, we're the owners of the building. I just wanted to point out that we really want the building to change from an unattractive house to the style that is San Clemente. And then I also wanted to point out the garage going back is all underground, and it's lines up with the neighbor's garage, not with their house. So it's not, as we will be very careful with the engineering, it isn't in line with the actual house next door.
The garage is a historic structure also. It's 92 years old.
I understand. I just wanted to point out which structure it is in line with. So we're excited about this. We've talked to the neighbors. We've had them over, had them look at the plan, and they are supportive, and we are supportive of wanting to be careful of their house. So thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions of staff or the applicant? All right, seeing none, then I will open the public hearing. Do we have any cards for item 8A?
No, sir.
We do have one.
No, sir.
You don't have, Larry did one. Is that 8A? Is that a card from Larry? Well, come on up to Larry, and you can do a card later. Larry.
The president of the Historical Society didn't put his name on the card.
We're just so excited about coming up here. My head is still reeling after that technical discussion on the waivers, but anyway. Larry Culbertson, representing the Historical Society and myself tonight. I want to thank Assistant Planner Lightfoot for a thorough report on this project, really complete. I live right up the street from this project, and I pass by the property frequently. The Historical Society is supportive of this project. It will not have any negative effect on the adjacent historic resource at 210 Calle, Seville. In fact, it looks as if it will complement and enhance the appearance of its neighbor. The photo simulations that show what a project will look like next to existing properties are particularly helpful in making this kind of assessment. The rotunda entry and its sweeping stairway from Avenida Santa Barbara will look much better than the straight ones that are there now. The increased garage door setback will also look great. The pergolas out in front will add an interesting touch. The setback of the second story from Calle Seville protects the historic resource from overmassing. Some fenestration on that open wall, that second story wall on the that setback from Calle Seville might look interesting. They've got kind of a round, might be an oculus on the one-story part out near the street, and that setback wall could use maybe a little bit of more personality. But overall, the project looks great. Comment on the sidewalk waivers. I understand the reason for the waivers, and I support it. The required retaining wall would probably look very tall and be probably look hideous and be very expensive. But Avenida Santa Barbara, as Commissioner Brown mentioned, is heavily traveled and it needs sidewalks very badly. I've lobbied for sidewalks there for years. I've gone to meetings and we almost got priority, but it didn't happen. I think that what we need is for engineering, hope you're there, Zach, engineering needs to go through these streets in advance and determine which side of the street is going to have a sidewalk someday down the line and not allow any waivers on that side. In this particular case, the left side as you're going toward the ocean is probably the more likely one. So someday we need sidewalks all the way down there. But they've got to stop granting these exemptions on both sides, which will preclude ever having sidewalks in those streets. I look forward to seeing this project become part of the neighborhood, and thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and open it up for Planning Commission discussion. Jason.
Obviously, the sidewalk waivers are outside of our purview. I think the council has delegated that in their process. I appreciate Commissioner Wu getting an explanation on why we've seen some issues in the past and we're not seeing others. That makes perfect sense. The project looks nice and I support it.
Michael?
Yes, I too support this project. I think it's going to be a huge improvement to the area. I've reviewed the landscape plan and Mr. Lightfoot did do an excellent job putting this package together for us. We've got a comprehensive plan here showing all the landscape, all the details, all the scale. It's all there. It's going to look great. I too am concerned with the loss of integrity in our sidewalk objective to have continuity in the streetscape, and the way we're approaching this now as a city is just creating a lot of hodgepodge, and it's unfortunate because I think since we're already doing a retaining wall over 3 feet on the property, we could have done it here and done a little landscape treatment in front to break it up. I think it could have been done here and it probably would have looked pretty good. But again, we don't have a say in that one at this point, but yes, in the photo sims, I'd like to just applaud staff on asking for that from the applicant. I don't know if that was a requirement for the photo sims or not, or was it something that the applicant come on up, the applicant
So we always request photo simulations, but the applicant, I'll give credit where credit's due, was very thorough, not just with the photo simulations, but with their application to the extent of calling out all the city standard setbacks and identifying any deviations in advance. So we did have a very thorough application and a very thorough applicant in this case.
Yes, these photo sims were actually, they were done properly. We don't always see that. These were obviously done with the CAD overlay, and they were scaled properly. And it was an almost realistic depiction of what will be there, and that is the intention. That's what we want to see. So I would encourage staff to continue to keep that bar really high for any development project where we would want, use photo sims as part of our review process and our exhibits. So with all that said, I support this project. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Zen?
Oh, once in a while, we see some project that designed really well, and that's one of the examples. And it's pleasant to look at. It's a great design. So I like this project. However, I just support this project, but I do have a little concern about the hedge height of 42 inches. The applicant asked for a exception for that. I think that our standard policy is you don't expect a privacy in the front yard. On the street front, not to mention that the corner portion of that hedge has some impact to the sight line of the traffic. So I'm of the opinion that we should limit the hedge in the street front yards, both sides on Calle, Seville, and Santa Barbara to 42 inches maximum. I also look at the driveway apron on the exhibiting for the basement level. It's a 3%, then followed by 1% leading, climbing up to the garage door. And so to put a ADA sidewalk around it, it asks for 2% cross slope. I really don't see any issue that why it cannot be done. So I'm a little concerned about the lack of condition required by the code in this discretionary approval. If we don't include that condition in the approval, there should be some compelling reason, and I cannot find a compelling reason to waive that condition. So my recommendation is to support this project, but with the additional condition that the applicant dedicate the easement up and around the sidewalk, the curb cut, as well as that the hedge fronting the street to be limited to 42 inches.
Well, if I may, just chime in on that. Sure. I believe staff has made that recommendation for 42 inches. It's in the report.
The staff make the recommendation that for the corner is limited to 42, but up higher, there has some hedges protecting the front yard at the corner, and they want it to be beyond 42 up to 6 feet. I'm not supportive of that.
Bart?
Yeah, I'd like to follow in tack with Jonathan and compliment the applicant on working with the city, working with design review. Compliment you and your staff and your sensitivity to the adjacent historic structure, and I can support the project.
Don?
I guess I'm supportive of the project. I'm disappointed in engineering. I thought when I looked at that slope, you could have, I think, worked it a little bit. They could have done a little landscaping and reduced the slope and put another 35 feet of sidewalk in. But somehow the city manager has an ability to, I guess, take that out of our hands. So I want to support the project, but I am disappointed that we didn't get 35 feet of sidewalk. And I looked at that slope and walked it, and I think it could have been done. I'm an engineer, too.
All right, and I won't bore you with my recitation because I am pretty much in agreement with my colleagues. So unless there's more discussion, I could entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion approving resolution number PC 19038, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Clemente, California, approving cultural heritage permit 19-370, minor exception permit 19-380, Walter remodel and addition, a request to construct a second floor addition on an existing duplex at 212 South Calle, Seville, and to install an arbor landscaping and walls taller than 42 inches in the front and street side setback areas.
Second.
Motion by Jason, second by Bart.
I make a motion to amend.
Okay.
And that we support the basic motion, to amend that we add a condition to limit all hedges in the front yard, fronting the two public streets to be 42 feet maximum height.
42 inches.
42 inches. And then condition 2 is to dedicate the 4-foot wide easement up and around the curb cut leading to the garage.
Is there a second to that motion? Hearing no second, then we don't pass the amendment. We have for the original motion, we have a motion by Jason, second by Bart. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Congratulations. Good luck. Our next item is General Plan Amendment 19-291, Specific Plan Amendment 19-292, Pier Bowl Specific Plan. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. Christopher Wright, Associate Planner. This continued public hearing discussion of an item on October 2nd for update of the Pier Bowl Civic Plan, General Plan Amendments, and an addendum to the General Plan EIR. The purpose of the project is to make the Pier Bowl Civic Plan and the General Plan and Coastal Land Use Plan consistent with each other. So that's the focus of the project. There's also some formatting and organization changes to improve the readability of the plan and make it more current with GIS maps. So at the last meeting, the commission went through each section of the document and gave some direction to staff to make changes. Staff has made those changes and attached a listing of what those changes are. Since the meeting, we have received some comments that we forwarded to the commission, a letter from the Pure Pride organization, and then also we received a comment from Commissioner Brown. So in response to that, we've actually had some draft changes. If you could pass this around. To respond to the comments that we received. So we're going to pass those around, and with that concludes my presentation. So we did finish the EIR addendum. It's attached to the packet, and we can answer any questions.
Okay, let's paperwork.
Do you have a copy you can share with Pure Pride?
Can we get 10 minutes?
There's a copy in the back, and I gave
Maybe
Pure Pride a copy. Yeah.
So maybe you could go through each of these items with us, because this is the first time we're seeing this, so we haven't had a chance to review the changes. So.
Sure. So the section 1 here, these changes are to address, Commissioner Brown had, actually at the last meeting, there was also some question on why there isn't a reference to the sea level rise analysis, and staff had said that more generally we included a reference to the local coastal program, but given that we received the comment again, we made some direct references to the sea level rise vulnerability assessment. So that's what some of these changes are. Also in the Pure Pride letter, there was a comment regarding safety quiet zone, so we added a reference in there to that. That's the section 1.2. So that's the first 3 changes. Section 2 is the chapter 2 changes. So section 2.1 is related to the Pure Pride letter, encouraging improvements to railroad crossings for coastal access. Same thing with the next change. For section 2.3, it's related to the OCTA letter, where they had a clarification how the bus route 1 also connects to the Metrolink station. So we added that in there. And then lastly, section 3 for chapter 4 of the Pure Bowl plan, the Pure Pride organization encourages some mention of economic development and funding, so we added an implementation measure to address pursuing of funding for public improvements.
Okay, thank you. And so there's the change sheet that you gave us, and then there's the EIR waiver that you're providing to us, and those are the main differences than we saw last month, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. Does anyone have any questions for staff? Zen.
Chris, I have one question. On EIR page 10, we have two areas. One is architecture, another one is architecture / business service and commercial district. And correct me if I'm wrong, I recall that the whole Pier boat area is visitor servicing area, is it?
It is not.
It's not?
Not. So the visitor serving commercial district, it's limited to the mixed use and commercial area of the Pier Bowl.
Okay, and then, but the short-term rental, they are allowed throughout the Pier bowl, or just the visitor servicing area?
They're allowed more throughout the Pier Bowl area to the residential and the commercial areas, whereas this overlay pertains to the commercial and mixed use areas.
Okay, so part of that Pier bowl is not a visitor servicing commercial district, but short-term rental are still allowed?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Michael?
Yes, Chris, thank you. This is a lot of work here. Last time, we spent quite a bit of time talking about the view section. And can you walk us through how you revise that?
Yes, I'll do my best, Chair, to the best thing to do, I think, is to go to the attachment, let's see here. Attachment 6, I think. Yeah, attachment 6 identifies the changes that were made. So I think what would help first is if you could clarify what changes in particular.
So we were
you
talking
had.
about how we're going to define that view from a certain point.
Oh, yes.
And we were going to take out the lines, we were going to adjust it.
Okay, sure.
Turn it up a bit.
Sure, so first we got rid of the red lines, and we the annotation, all the text on the images, so it's just the image, and we changed the name of the images to view from a particular point, so view from Avenida Victoria to Coast and Beachcomber versus Avenida Victoria to Coast and Beachcomber, so we try to more
broaden.
To touch on the nature of the comments we received.
Glad, that's good. Thank you.
And I just wanted to clarify, just kind of more for everyone's edification, the fundamental position with the EIR waiver is that the Pier Bowl specific plan is not really changing anything versus environmentally and versus what we have in the general plan. So there's no effect on the general plan EIR. Am I essentially correct on that?
Yes.
I worded it clumsily?
Yes, simply put, there's no new impact beyond the impact studied and mitigated in the general plan EIR.
Okay, good, very good. Any other questions for staff? Oh, I'm sorry, Don.
No, I'd just like to state for the record, since we're on this visual thing, change that I was absent for the last meeting, but I did review all 5 hours and 45 minutes of video that you went through, including the extensive discussion on view and view quarters, planned palettes, and everything else. So it was a very thorough meeting that you conducted with a page turn on every item of the report. So I just want to state that for the record.
Thanks for clarifying that. And Jason?
I too reviewed the video.
Okay, thank you. All right, I don't see any other questions for staff, so I will open the public hearing. And the first person we have up is Lori Donchak for Pier Pride.
You guys are doing a great job. Thank you for helping our city. So I'm here, my name's Lori Donchak, resident of San Clemente. I'm here representing the Pier Pride Foundation. And thank you, Chris, for being so responsive to the letter we sent earlier this week. I'm going to focus on economic development since the safety quiet zone aspect seems to have been addressed in the revisions in front of you. As you know, we lost redevelopment funding in 2012. The Sea-Rise study says that the maintenance for around the pier is going to be extensive and more expensive than we can ever imagine. 65,000 of us pay taxes that support 2 million visitors a year. So what I'd like you to think about, and I think that we're adding something called Pursue Funding is a good start, but I ask you to deliberate on the idea of economic development. It's got a funding component to it, and as you know from that letter we sent, there's 5 different ways. You can consider tourist occupancy fees, updating the parking master plan, revisit and expand uses of the clean ocean fee, actively pursue grants for capital projects, consider formation of a Pier Bowl business improvement district. The opportunities are plentiful. But as importantly, and what I'm hoping will find its way into this section of the specific plan, a key step to promoting the Pier Bowl as a positive environment would be to create a business roundtable. The Sea-Rise Vulnerability Study does an excellent job identifying the businesses that could be affected and are affected just because it's an old part of town. Could the specific plan commit to working with the Pier Bowl Business Association, the Chamber of Commerce, and San Clemente real estate community as part of their go-forward vision? In other words, let's commit to being business-friendly in the Pier Bowl since that's our biggest visitor-serving portion of the city. We strongly urge that a section that elaborates on ways to ensure Pier Bowl economic vitality be added to the specific plan. And those of you that actually went and looked at the original plan, it was really just a roadmap for redevelopment funding spending. And I did a lot of research this last week to find a model for us, and I couldn't find one because nobody knows what to do once the redevelopment money is gone. And I'm running out of time, but at minimum, if you're going to accept Chris's change here, get the word regional in here because we're counting on OCTA to help with that safety quiet zone improvement, and they are a county-funded predominant item. But the bigger idea is business vitality. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, where did you recommend we would add the word regional?
On page 3 of your errata, 3-1, the proposal says the city will pursue private, state, and federal. Orange County is not state or federal. It's, you know, so you could maybe put the word regional in there or county or something like that. But it's kind of ironic because for sure they would partner with us on this underpass project.
Very good, thank you. And Mark McGuire.
Good evening, Chair. Mark McGuire, also a resident of San Clemente and representing the owner, John McKinley, owns several parcels in the core area of the Pier Bowl. Great job, Chris. I didn't say that the last time I was here, but there's a lot of work that has gone into this, and I think he's done a great job. I'm going to focus on 2 things related to the core area, which is only 11 parcels, by the way, along Frontera, and then a couple parcels up around Coronado, the bookends. The FAR for commercial in the core area is half the FAR if you do mixed use, and I don't get that. If you want to do a small hotel that's the same size as what a mixed-use building would be, I would think that would be a great use in the core area. And in fact, there are existing hotels that now, won't comply with the FAR requirements. They'll be out of conformance. They may already because of the square footage, but to have only half the FAR for truly visitor-serving commercial uses in the core area compared to doing mixed-use residential on top of the first floor, to me, you should be allowed to have the same FAR if you do a hotel. The second thing that I want to talk about is that we support the idea that there's a strong desire to have a pedestrian experience along Victoria and along this core area. But that does run up against the demand and the requirement to park your uses. So take the one empty lot on Victoria. If you want to build something on that lot, which is my client's lot, you're going to have to park it. And so you're going to have a curb cut, you're going to have to get access off of Victoria to do that, unless you promote some sort of off-site parking, which is great. But there's no off-site parking available in this area because it's all being used because there's a great demand during the summer. So our feeling is that the solution is to promote an in lieu fee that would allow people to pay into the servicing of the trolley. We see that there are over 40,000 people getting on the trolley at the outlets and over 56,000 people that are getting on and off the trolley at the Pier Bowl. Those are the two high-use areas if you read the staff report that Tom Vonnegut put together for the council last night. So we think it's already an existing fact that people are parking at the outlets and coming into town and predominantly coming down to the Pier Bowl. So we think the time is now to do an in lieu fee. I don't know that you'll be able to get that done tonight, but we're certainly going to try to make the case for that before this gets approved by the council. And we'd appreciate any support that the Planning Commission could give us in that effort. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue? And seeing no one, I will close the public hearing, and I'll open this up for Planning Commission discussion. Jason, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll make my comments very brief. One, I'm supportive of the change that Lori talked about with the regional. So I think we should probably add, when we get to the point of making a resolution, it should probably be private, county, regional, state. I also like the idea of a business roundtable because I think that businesses are obviously critical to understanding the current conditions and promoting that. I don't know if that's something that we should put into the specific plan here. And I do worry a bit about us from the dais trying to decide which businesses should be comprised of the business roundtable. Generally, like I said, very supportive of that idea. I think they're very effective. I've seen them be effective in other jurisdictions. And then, that's an interesting comment that you made, Mark, on the in lieu fees. As I sit here today, I certainly am not of the educated enough to be able to know where we should place that here, but, I certainly think it's something that I would encourage you to explore with council. And, out of hand, that doesn't sound unreasonable, but I think we'd need to have more information before we as a body really make a determination on that. But those numbers were very impressive from the trolley and the use yesterday, and I did watch that and I read that report and find that very interesting. And as I've said multiple times here, and I think some of my colleagues are appreciating that just in what we're using in our daily lives. My car will now come, to me on a parking lot without me being there, so it makes the, first of all, that scares the living daylights out of me when I use that feature, but secondly, these things are changing rapidly, and how we're using mobility is changing rapidly, so this document will be around for a long time, so that's all I have. And I really applaud you, Chris. This is just a tremendous amount of work, so thank you for doing this for this great community.
Michael?
Yes. So, Chris, I have a question for you, if you wouldn't mind. Come back up. So, the last go-around, we did have some discussion on some alternatives for parking to provide relief to the area, and the in lieu fee was part of that discussion. As I recall, I hate to put the spotlight on you here, but were you going to look into that and how we could actually, what the plan would look like?
Yes, so on page 4.4 of the plan, it will show the changes I made at the commission's direction. And there was direction to add an implementation measure for a comprehensive circulation and parking strategy. And it talks more about making Avenue Victoria one-way street and improving connectivity between the Pier Bowl and the downtown. It doesn't specifically mention in lieu fees, but, so we could do that if the commission wanted.
Quick interjection on
Yeah,
that.
please, Tom.
About a month ago, staff had a 6-month requirement report to council on the downtown parking study. And I was there to try to support that, in which staff asked for direction on the in lieu fee. And as I recall, you can correct me, Gabriel, but the council was very divided on that. I don't think you got clear guidance on the in lieu fee, because one council member was very much against it. And I think she kind of swayed the others, but maybe you can recapture that guidance that you guys asked for on that parking study, which addressed in lieu fee, where you asked for that guidance from them.
So I'm looking at what the direction was from that city council meeting, and they did direct staff to prepare a white paper to bring back to the city council on the possibility of establishing the in lieu fee program. And so they didn't necessarily give the go-ahead, but they wanted it to be studied further.
It was quite an acrimonious debate.
Yeah. No, and I can appreciate that. So we've got many conversations happening, but how can we get that added here, and so we can lock this down? Is this something that needs to be added, so when it goes to council for review, it's included, and they can either take it out or leave it in? Yeah, because I think it's a great idea. We talked about a comprehensive approach here, not just a one-way. What you've got here is great, and we talked about this, but in order to be effective, we have to have more going on. And that program, I think, is going to prove to, really provide relief in the area, especially if we can tie into Del Mar. That was also part of the discussion. I think it's an excellent idea, and it really should be here somewhere. Is that something we can talk about tonight? We need to get into the details about it?
No, I think it could be easily added here if the commission wants to do that. Just, this would be the place I would recommend adding something, just in the last sentence, just saying, establish an in lieu fee parking program, and then maybe in that sentence.
Or explore possibilities.
Yeah. Because it says, should review the option of making, it's not committing the city to doing a specific thing. It's talking about doing a study, which through that study, there would be a decision made on those things that come out of the study. Okay. So I would suggest putting it in the sentence.
So, we're not, I think the text is going to be important. We're not saying we should do an in lieu fee. We should say it's one of the things, one of the tools we should consider in the toolbox.
Considering an in lieu fee or study of something.
Okay, so maybe you can write some text up for that, so we can look at it tonight and see if that's the way we want to go.
Okay.
Did you have anything else, Mike?
That's it, thank you.
Okay, Don?
Yeah, I'm a little late to the party because I missed the last meeting, but I think when I reviewed the video, it was brought up by Mark, and then again tonight, and I forget, what's the rationale for the FAR differential between the mixed use versus just normal buildings? What's the FAR differential? Why, did you guys, in my 5 hours of video I reviewed, did I miss that?
I don't recall it. It was a question I wanted to ask staff about that, is why the FAR difference?
Should I answer it now?
Please.
Okay, so it's in the general plan. The general plan actually distinguishes commercial and mixed use. We are making this match the general plan. The comment is well noted and something that staff will be considering. But I think that to pursue that now, there would be some bigger changes that would be needed, because it would involve a general plan amendment, a coastal land use plan amendment, and further environmental review.
Well, explains it.
Yeah, but it's something that I think it's a good point, something that staff is going to give some more consideration to, and maybe be part of something much broader for the local coastal program process that we're undergoing right now. So it would be really good, though, to get the commission's direction on And that's something maybe in a separate motion on whether the commission wants staff to study that. And what
To study changing the FAR in the
Yes.
Pier Bowl?
No, I think it would be more generally in mixed-use zones where you can have it depends on what the commission's direction is, but at least from a staff perspective, it seems like it wouldn't be just Pier Bowl. It would probably be having a mixed-use FAR that also applies to hotels. So lodging and mixed use would be the 2.0, and then commercial only would be the 1.0. But there's been no direction from council on this.
If we're looking at changing the FAR in the general plan, I think that's a little bit out of the purview of this. Maybe we can talk about the possibility of giving staff some direction, like in the report section or something like that. I would hesitate just go to, I remember, now that you brought it up, I remember those kinds of conversations that we had during the general plan. I just don't remember why the FAR is different. I think there was a reason.
The cobwebs, as soon as he mentioned that, it's just not a Pier Bowl specific, it's kind of common throughout all the focus areas, I suppose. Is that right, Bart? Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
Well,
40 meetings in 4 years, it kind of blurred.
We gave, if I remember right, we gave mixed use a little boost in square footage, mainly to promote the residential element and meet our residential plans and so forth. So it wasn't necessary, or it was a bonus for adding the housing element, where you didn't want to give the bonus just to commercial, because then there's no advantage to go residential.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Zen?
Yes, Chris, on the comprehensive circulation and parking study on page 4-4, to continue that comment, I'd like to say review the option of making a Victoria one-way street toward the end. We can expand it to have, for example, in lieu fee, as well as parking master plan, as Mrs. Donchak mentioned. To optimize the revenue, I'm looking at her comments here. Optimize revenue. If we pick one place in the city to try to do some dynamic pricing type of thing, Pier would be the first place, because North Beach is North Beach still has lots of availability, and downtown traditionally has some resistance about paid parking. Pier is already paid parking, so on high time during summer, the city can raise the parking rate if it's possible. So that way we can generate a little more parking revenue from there. So again, we're not committing to any of that, but those are the options that we can, we can say studied options such as in lieu fee, updated parking master parking plan, and dynamic pricing, etc. So that's one comment. Another comment is on the public improvements. Back to 402 section. The pier is the most important coastal resource the city has, and I think and there's a lack of accessibility to the pier because of the railway cross, because of the underpass doesn't have an accessible ramp. I understand it's expensive, there's a little feasibility about the length of the ramp, etc., but it can be done. There are other ways to do it. You can have a stair lift, you can have an elevator. So underneath the public improvements, I'd like to see if we can add a bullet item along with all the dozens of bullet items, just say improve the accessibility to the pier. So that's the two main comment I have.
I will say that I think looking at the possibility of in lieu fees is a great idea. I'm a little bit concerned about putting in the specific plan, because that's kind of a citywide thing. If we put in the specific plan, we're kind of saying, just look at it for the Pier Bowl. And I don't think we should be looking at it just for the Pier Bowl. It's a broader question than that. So I'm just a little bit concerned about that. I'm certainly in favor, by the way, of adding county and regional to that section, to the circulation parking strategy. With accessibility, accessibility is a great thing. I'm just wondering, we have accessibility now with an at-grade crossing. If we remove the at-grade crossing, then whatever we did with the below-grade crossing, we'd have to add accessibility. So I'm not sure I don't know if we want to, are we encouraging that we add accessibility beyond what we have now, or special accessibility? Do we need to do that?
Currently, the pier is not accessible. The at-grade crossing is not accessible. If you're bound to a wheelchair, you cannot go through it.
They laid down.
They did put an ADA path of travel from the whole crossing all the way down past the tunnel, all the way down to Fisherman's Annex.
Yeah, that's the pink sidewalk. So
yeah, just finished it up about 6 months ago.
Plus, when they laid down, they put down those when they were building the trail, they put down those concrete sections in there. My understanding was those were for ADA, if I'm correct on that. So I'm sure we'll handle it as we, make changes.
Path of travel, so Ocean Festival, everybody had to move all their sails, tents out of the way for T-shirts and the whole bit when they went down there. So there's an ADA recently completed project down there.
Yeah, so I'm just not sure we need to endorse adding more than that. And I guess the question then would be, what would that be? What would that look like above and beyond what we have right now? So.
Well, eventually the accessibility will have to go through the underpass.
Yeah, and there's reasons why we would actually be required to do that, depending on changes that would be going at the different grade crossings.
Mm-hmm.
But if we put something like that in the specific plan, I'm afraid we'd be saying, from what we have now, we should be increasing accessibility. And I'm not sure what we would be saying increasing it to. What are we doing with that?
Can I comment on this?
Yes, sure. Please.
Okay. So the errata sheet, this is one of the items Pure Pride had actually brought up, improving access and the railroad crossings.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these changes address that. It says considers and pursues opportunities to improve coastal access, including upgrades to railroad crossings. It is more general. It doesn't say disabled access, but it's saying improving coastal access. Also, at our workshop, the Pure Pride organization gave us renderings of a conceptual upgrade to the undercrossing. We actually included those as an appendix to the plan to show it as a concept, right? Because if you make it a program document, it can open up new things that we would have to take care of to get this plan adopted. But we reference that the design as an example, something that maybe the city could consider through the capital improvement program. So those are some ways that the staff has tried to address this.
Okay, thank you. Jason.
I was just going to comment on your statement about the in lieu fees. I think I'm comfortable adding some language to the end of the implementation section there, with the idea being that this may kickstart the process that then may spread to other areas of the city. I think we don't have the other specific plans in front of us right now or open, so what's the harm, I guess, is my concern. I mean, I understand what you're saying. We don't want to say this is the only area you should be focusing on, right? Because it's a citywide issue, but this is the document that we have in front of us, and so we don't have all the other documents in front of us, and maybe this begins the process and reinforces the white paper that the city council's looking at, because ultimately that's a decision they're going to have to make, but it at least memorializes to a degree that we were talking about it. And I think you, Commissioner Blackwell here has some language that he's been working on that I think might satisfy it. It's just talking about possibilities and study.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, yeah, it's, and this is one of the most impacted areas in town. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So this would be an effective way to start to address that. So its suggested language would be at the end of this, the paragraph there after T-zone areas, as well as the possibility of establishing programs such as an in lieu fee program, parking master plan, and other measures to relieve circulation and parking impacts.
Is that would that be added to that paragraph or replacement to? Okay, so.
Just to finish off, or we can start a new paragraph.
Yeah, you do it after the end of comment areas.
Yeah.
What does staff feel about that? Does that work for you?
That's what we talked
Sure.
about, yeah.
Okay.
Can you say it again, sir?
Yeah, why don't you read it?
Sure. So at the very end of the, after areas, as well as the possibility of programs such as establishing an in lieu fee program, parking master plan, and other measures to relieve circulation and parking impacts.
In the program and other measures?
An in lieu fee program,
comma,
parking master plan, and other measures to relieve circulation and parking impacts.
There'll be a comma after parking master plan.
Eileen will take care of the details.
She'll fix it. She'll make it nice.
Parking.
And parking impacts.
And I'm sorry, can we just go over again where we're going to put it?
So at the end of the.
What page is it?
So it'd be on 4-4, Part B, Comprehensive Circulation and Parking Strategy. At the end of the paragraph. It's just a long paragraph.
4-4.
Page 4-4?
B, okay, at the end of areas.
Yes, after areas.
Yeah.
Okay, and it doesn't have a
No.
period right now.
So it's perfect. It's already set up for,
So it's just a comma?
need to be completed. This just had to happen.
Do you want to entertain a motion?
Let me see, any other comments? Sure, I'll entertain a motion.
I will make a motion that we adopt Resolution PC 19034 entitled "A Resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Clemente, California, recommending the City Council certify Addendum Number 3 to the General Plan Environmental Impact Report and approve General Plan Amendment 19-291 and Specific Plan Amendment 19292 to achieve consistency between the General Plan Local Coastal Program and Pier Bowl Specific Plan that has the included errata that was placed on the dais, with the change to the errata on Section 3, 3.1, page 4.4. It says add Section 404C. We will insert the words regional and county, comma, after private. And to also incorporate the changes that Commissioner Blackwell just recited from the dais to section 4, or page 4.4, paragraph B on the comprehensive circulation and parking strategy.
Would you consider Commissioner Wu's improved accessibility to the Pier bullet on 4-2, or is that?
I think Chris stated that that was already incorporated into the errata.
Okay. I'll second.
Did you, second motion by Jason, second by Don, did you get all that?
I do, but there was just another suggestion on page 4-1 to add improved accessibility to the pier.
No, we just talked about that. That's not going in because it's already covered by what staff told us.
And so, I'm sorry.
Okay, so motion by Jason and second by Don. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right.
A lot of good work, thanks.
Thanks.
30 years in coming.
Okay, we're on to item 9A, transfer of a 4 by 325-foot lot, portion of Senda de la Playa to the Capistrano Shores Mobile Home Park, continued from October 16th. And this is by our city attorney, assistant city attorney. Temporary assistant city attorney.
Substitute. How about that?
Okay, sounds good.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this item is continued from the October 16 meeting, and like the other item that was considered during that meeting, the zoning amendment, this item stems from the settlement between the city and Capistrano Shores. So this item is for the city to transfer a 4 by 325-foot stretch of Senda de la Playa, which is a street that the city owns in fee, that is right off of North El Camino Real, and it sits between the 9 manufactured homes that are part of the Capistrano Shores Park, and on the other side of that is the railroad right-of-way. So because the City Council approved the settlement, and this was one of the actions that stems from this, there are different ways for the city to transfer property. The most appropriate means in this case was to use the common benefit option offered by the government code, where the city may transfer property when it's for the common benefit. This item is before you as a planning commission because any transfer of property like this requires a report from the planning commission as to conformity with the general plan. And then finally, because this is an action transferring property, there's also CEQA implications, and so we looked over the applicable CEQA exemptions in this case. So for the common benefit finding, this particular stretch of Playa de la Senda has been a matter of dispute for years, and as to who exactly owns it, the city's records show that it's owned in fee. However, currently there are 8 manufactured homes that encroach upon the street up to 4 feet. There's one where the frontage is right up to the 4 feet, and so transferring this stretch of property over helps clarify that existing encroachment issue. And then also in terms of the common benefit, this is one of the means that the City Council has asked for the Planning Commission, eventually City Council, to consider as a way of resolving the lawsuit. During the last meeting, and as it states here, I said it was an 18-year lawsuit. As one of the residents of Capistrano Shores corrected, it's been 18 years of litigation. This particular lawsuit has not been going on for 18 years, but as was discussed at this commission before, there have been a series of litigation and other challenges, and we certainly hope that that the settlement of this lawsuit resolves the 18-year disputes that have occurred. In terms of general plan conformity, this particular the street is zoned for open space as a major point of the lawsuit. It's designated as open space under the general plan, as are the property owned by Capistrano Shores. So there would not be a change in designation of the current street. We looked through the general plan circulation element and mobility policies, and the circulation plan in no way identifies this particular stretch as a major arterial, secondary, or collector roadway. We worked with the city engineer to make sure that the transfer of this 4 foot wide stretch would in no way affect circulation, mobility, access. And then also as was provided to you here today, one of the images shows that there's an access point that allows access to the shoreline. The transfer will in no way impede access to the shoreline because currently there are 8 manufactured homes that sit atop this 4 foot stretch, so there would be no meaningful change in access or use of the street. In terms of the CEQA analysis, because this is a minor alteration to the land, we looked at the Class 5 exemption and determined that, in particular, because the mobile homes are already atop this particular 4 foot stretch, there would be the use of the street would remain entirely consistent with the existing conditions. So if the Planning Commission were to forward this on to City Council, with the recommendation that it's for the common benefit, consistent with the general plan, recommending the Class 5 CEQA exemption, the City Council would then authorize staff to execute the grant deed, which would then effectuate the transfer onto Capistrano Shores for the property. But very much like with the zoning amendment and with any proposed city action of this nature that stems from a settlement agreement, there's case law, the Troncus case and others that make very clear that this is what comes from the settlement is that the city is to consider this property transfer. The Planning Commission is not required to make any particular findings, as the City Council is not required to make the approval in the end. In this case, the City Council approved the settlement agreement, which in concept included this particular transfer, and so we move it through the process just as we would any other action. So it's before you for your review.
Okay. Questions for staff? Jason?
Yeah, just have one question. So we're proposed to transfer 60, just shy of 7,000 square feet, right?
The overall street is about 8,000 square feet. The transfer would be about 1,300 square feet.
Okay. So are there property tax implications? I mean, that will be accruing to the benefit of of our schools and things like that by this transfer? I mean, that's valuable real estate, right?
Correct. So property taxes in the sense that Capistrano Shores will now be paying the property taxes?
We don't pay property taxes
Correct.
on this, right? So, I mean, but it's also based upon the basis for that transfer, right?
Correct.
So I want to make sure if we're doing this for the common benefit, 1,300 square feet, 50 feet from the water is probably a significant portion. It would cost a lot of money.
Yes, correct. This is now added to the private ownership of the Capistrano Shores Incorporation.
And how is that basis generated?
For property taxes?
Yeah, for the property tax.
I'm sorry to say, I really don't know how exactly it's calculated, but property taxes are usually based off of two things. There's an assessment that the county does, and that assessment takes into account the structure that's on the property, and then also the acreage of the property.
But the transfer price is the critical component, right?
Oh,
Prop
correct.
13, right?
That's part of it.
What are we stating that the transfer price is on this?
Well, the price is the consideration for resolution of the lawsuit.
So has anybody put a price on that for purposes of a value on that?
No, there's not been a valuation done in this case, like an actual assessment, a hard assessment.
It's a quid pro quo.
Ukrainian style, to solve the lawsuit, we give away this valuable property?
I don't know if it's Ukrainian style, but it is one of the conditions of the settlement agreement that the city process this transfer agreement.
But there's value being transferred here, so.
Correct.
What does the city gain out of this? Any value at all?
The gain is the resolution of the lawsuit, clarification of the encroachment issue that has been around since, as I understand, the 1960s, and moving on from the Capistrano Shores litigation.
I'm curious, since this is a mobile home park, why don't they take their mobile trailers and move them off the right away?
So the manufactured homes are still usually on a pad. They're not on wheels the same way homes that are approved by the Department of Motor Vehicles. So it's still actually on a construction pad. They're not so easily moved.
Didn't we talk about that in our last meeting, that they were subject to the mobile home federal jurisdiction on mobile homes?
Manufactured homes.
Okay.
And so why don't they move them?
Well, they can move their homes any which way on their property. They've been situated 4 foot into Senda de la Playa for some time now, and the city engineer has determined that 4 foot encroachment in no way impacts the right of way access. So there's we think that the transfer of the property works and that there's, it helps resolve the lawsuit.
And so, do we know how much the lawsuit has cost approximately?
I'm sure there's a way to know that. I don't know the answer to
Because
that.
I'm very concerned about the value and making sure that our schools get, tax money from that transfer. And if I were a betting man, I'd bet that there's a, quick claim deed that's going to go over there with the consideration of $1 or something along those lines. I mean, and that to me would seem erroneous or fraudulent, because that's not the value that we're talking about here. We're talking about real value. And so I think it's important, if the Orange County assessor is ever reviewing, this, that they recognize that, at least from where I sit, this is $1 million type value, and it should be assessed as such.
That would be up to the assessor's office, right?
I understand, which is why I'm stating it for the record, that if I'm looking at this, I'm looking at a great value for to make the finding of a common benefit, which I'm required to make. I view this as a very valuable piece of property that we're exchanging in lieu of the lawsuit going away. So that's my questions, which was a statement, sir.
Question for staff?
Well, before I speak, I'd like to make a disclosure. I made it last meeting. Prior to our October 16 public commission meeting, I walked the site and I bumped into Mr. Eric Anderson, and we had a brief discussion about this item. So my question to council is, you stated that the city owns it in fee. Except for the encroachment you mentioned, are there any other encumbrance, such as easement?
As far as we understand, there are not, that the city owns it in fee, including the area that is currently encroached upon.
Can I make a correction?
No, we're asking questions of staff at the moment.
Underneath the road, are there infrastructure?
I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to say yes or no. I know that when we spoke about this with the city engineer, that he looked at the road, the adjacent properties, and the infrastructure, and determined that the transfer would not impact anything of that nature. So I don't know what sits under the road. I know that our city engineer was okay with the transfer.
Okay, the right-of-way is 20 feet wide. Orange County Fire Authority typically asks for 20 feet as a fire lane width. Did you reach out to Orange County Fire Authority?
Our office did not, and I can check with the city engineer about what their office did in terms of that, the research and communicate with the fire authority.
What does the city use this street mainly for? I understand out of the gate there's an outlet of the Segunda de Secha Cañada, so there may be some engineering work that needs to be done. And then also out of the gate, if you make a right turn, you can go to the beach. For example, if we want to collect some water samples at that place or 100 feet away from that place, up and down, we can use that access. Other than that, how often does the city use this street?
I don't know how often the street is used. I know generally how it is used, which is there's parking on the other side of the street. There are walkways that allow you to access the coast. There are people use the street to access the manufactured homes that are there, as well as I believe it's a common area club. But I don't know frequency of use or any other details of that nature.
Mr. Perez, can you put the exhibit I sent you on the screen? It's this one. I'd like to talk about clarify the ownership on the parcel map. So Yes, so if we look at that street, Playa, Senda Playa, and we continue toward the beach, there is a sliver of land that's about 20 feet wide. Then if you make a right, and there's a rectangular parcel that covers the outlet. All those pieces of land are owned by the city, are they?
Which parcels, I'm sorry?
Well, the parcel, if you're on the street and you're walking toward the outlet, beyond the gate, those other pieces, are they also owned by the city?
I don't know. I don't know beyond Senda de la Playa, what is owned by the city. I could check property records and find out pretty quick here. If you
Well, that's a public beach, so. Now, on the other side of Senda de la Playa, that's OCTA's right of way.
Correct. It's the, yes.
Now, Gabriel, if you go to the next page, if you can enlarge it slightly to show the beach access. This is in our certified land use plan of a beach, certified coastal land use plan. It shows that this is a private access point. But if the city owns the Senda de la Playa in fee, and I assume that the outlet of the Segunda de Checha Cañada is also owned by the city. So the whole thing in yellow is on public land. Do you know any reason why it's referred as a private access point?
I don't know, Commissioner. It might have something to do with the nature of the actual access point. The Playa de la Senda, the street itself, is owned in fee by the city. I can't speak to the actual access points on that map where they are.
Owned by the city. You looked up the title.
Correct.
There's no other easement. It's in fee simple.
That's correct.
With the exception of that 4 feet encroachment.
The 4 feet encroachment is also owned by the city. There has been.
Well, it's an encumbrance, so to speak.
Correct. It's not a recorded encumbrance.
Okay.
But yes, it is. There are these 8 manufactured homes that are currently encroaching upon the street. Our record from our research, working with the city engineer, it's the city's understanding that it owns that property in fee.
Okay.
There has been since since early 1960s. There has been dispute about who owns what. Our title reports and title records show that today Playa de la Senda, Senda de la Playa is owned in fee by the city.
Okay. Well, last question about the common benefit finding. I'd like to trust the council and the city council and the legal council made a good judgment. But are we allowed to consider the transactional nature of it? Or are you presented as a standalone pieces and they say merely giving up this land is for the public interest?
The commission can consider whatever factors it wishes to consider on any of these items. But
we don't know the whole transaction.
The transaction.
The quid pro quo. Can you explain in detail?
Yes, the transfer would be for 4 feet by a 325 stretch of the property. It's outlined in one of the exhibits.
Okay, what does the city get?
The city gets, for consideration, resolution of this lawsuit, and then clarification of these of the encroachment issues that deal with this particular street.
Clarification in their favor. So the city got the case to be dropped.
Correct. It's one of the terms of the settlement.
Okay, thank you.
So, we're settling a single lawsuit. There's been 18 years of litigation. How do we know that this will stop the litigation? What kind of guarantees or?
Well, like before, we don't know. I could tell you that our office has been working closely in good faith with Capistrano Shores Council, and that in our talks with them, they're eager to resolve this, as is the city. And from my understanding of the history, this represents a real, the settlement represents a real, almost, it's sort of like an SAT word, a watershed moment in terms of the city's relationship with Capistrano Shores. So there's never a guarantee that litigation won't pop up again. There's never a guarantee that there won't be some change down the line that creates another dispute. But we believe that this particular settlement represents a resolution not only to this lawsuit, but nearly 2 decades worth of dispute over the nature of and use of this particular land.
And the lawsuit itself, is it only a lawsuit over this particular parcel, or is it a larger lawsuit like zoning and stuff?
Correct. It's a larger lawsuit that deals with the general plan land use designation and zoning for the site. The city designates and zones Capistrano Shores for open space. The homeowners were concerned that this then limits their ability in the future to develop the site, and also limits their ability to use the site currently, since they would be a non-conforming use. And so that was the crux of the lawsuit.
Are we, and I understand if you can't communicate this to us, but is the result of this still allow the city to zone as it deems appropriate?
Yes, there's nothing, there was a zoning amendment that was before the Planning Commission, and that zoning amendment changed, it should be approved by the City Council, would change particular rules in the non-conforming provisions of the zoning code that would impact existing mobile homes, particularly Capistrano Shores being a mobile home with a conditional use permit. The city is still still well within its power at any point to change the zoning, general plan land use designation, or anything of that nature for this site or any in the future.
And
that failed.
So I assume that if the city in the future said we're changing the zoning to something different than what it is, and the residents of Capistrano Shores didn't like that, then we would still be potentially subject to litigation from them if they didn't like the zoning.
Correct.
It's still zoned open space. I don't think that's changed.
Correct. Right now, the zoning is, the current zoning, the open space zoning and open space general land use designation as it sits today was one of the, was an impetus for the lawsuit.
And if Capistrano Shores, say we kept the zoning like it is, and in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, Capistrano Shores didn't care for that zoning, I assume they could still come forth with another lawsuit and again contest even the current zoning?
Well, that would be, that probably would not be possible given the terms of the settlement and the nature of this lawsuit. That this was their challenge to the zoning and to the general plan land use designation. So by settling this, they would be foregoing a challenge like that in the future for the zoning and for the land use designation.
So they're actually acknowledging that we have the right to zone it the way that we did?
Correct.
That is
Correct.
That is in the settlement, that we're fine with the way we've zoned it, and they acknowledge we have that right to do that?
Right. I don't.
Some of us have been hearing this for 10 years now. So
Yeah,
that's
of course.
I'm trying to kind of clarify, so.
It would, to be honest, sir, it wouldn't be fair for me to say that they're fine with it, but part of the
No, I understand.
part of the part of the settlement is that the suit challenging the zoning and land use designation will be dismissed.
But there's no acknowledgement on their, I guess, it seems like without a clear acknowledgement,
I understand.
Are we at risk here of, we say, okay, sure, this is fine, and then a week later, it's like, well, we're going to put in the same challenge. So
That cannot happen. That's correct. So
that cannot happen, okay.
Right. So I could look into this right now and try to get you more clarification on that, but that's the gist of the settlement, is that this particular challenge to the land use and zoning would be dismissed.
Yeah, you don't have to look into it, I'm just kind of trying to get a clarification of
Yes.
what we're really getting here
Correct.
for this, so.
Correct.
Okay. Great. And Jason?
So, I guess Commissioner Wu's statements are actually, I think, fairly appropriate. I'm very concerned if we didn't have the OC Fire Authority tell us that this was acceptable. You know, that to me seems to be, especially if we're talking about this being a common benefit, I am slightly concerned that since we aren't privy to the entire settlement details and the reps and warranties that are being made and the waivers, I guess that's probably the best way to look at this, specifically as it relates to the zoning challenge that was made for the open space, right? It's tough for me to adjudicate whether we're getting a fair deal. I think council certainly has the ability to look at that and determine that much differently than we do, and to make that political decision that they would make on that, which I think we can't do here. But so, you know, I would like to hear more, especially from the OC Fire. I'd like to understand Commissioner Wu's concerns here about the public access, and if that's public land, you know, are we in the public access versus the private access that we're talking about? That seems to be a fairly important distinction, and as well as to maybe have a little bit more meat on the bone from what the, you know, quote, the transfer helped settle an 18-year lawsuit against the city, right? That's A, not accurate, and B, okay, I mean, so we could settle a lawsuit, you know, settle with prejudice, settle without, you know, it would be nice to have a little bit more meat on that bone, and I wonder if it would be wise for this body to consider tabling this for maybe, I don't know, until the first business meeting in December, so we could have a little bit more information, so I could make a decision that, yes, this is of the common benefit. So I'd make a motion that we table this until the first business meeting in December, where we can have an answer to some of those questions.
Well, we're still actually asking questions right now,
Oh,
staff.
okay.
So
Sorry.
let's consider that when we get to discussion.
Okay, I'll consider that then.
Yeah, so. Other questions of staff at this time? Okay. Doesn't look like it. So there's no applicants. Oh, I'm sorry. Chris, did you have a question?
Do you know how we're transferring this property to the, to the park?
Yes, it's by way of a grant deed that was one of the attachment items in the settlement, and it was included as a staff report here.
And the city's not reserving an easement of any kind?
No, not over this property.
Okay.
Okay. If there are no more questions, we don't have an applicant to speak, but I will open the public hearing. Do we have any cards on this item? Is this one, or is that the other one? You can fill it out after you speak, it's fine. Thanks.
So I think first, if I may, my name's Eric Anderson, lifetime resident San Clemente. First, I just want to clarify, 18 years, 13 years lawsuit, got to take that off the table. They didn't even own it 13 years ago, so they bought it, 2008 was the time of purchase. One lawsuit against the city, this is it, the only one, and the only reason it was filed is because we came up on a statute of limitations regarding the Centennial General Plan. So we had to file the lawsuit to preserve our rights. The meat of that lawsuit is the downzoning, so I just want to clarify that. This stretch of land, it was entitled with the entire parcel ownership at the time of development in 1960. The original owner, Robert Holden, he quitclaimed that small section of land, parcel 2B, to the city so that they would always have access to that gate. That's how you guys get to the beach and maintain it. When that quitclaim was done, it was done with the exclusive easement rights to these homes right here. No one else can go on that road besides city employees to get to that gate and these owners right here. You could never do a public walking path. You could never open that to the public in any capacity. So that's important to note. All of our private utilities are under that road. So essentially you have all the liability, we have all the benefit. We would prefer to switch that. We'll take all the liability, you write the easement, you have the property, we own the fee. City engineer does not want to do that. They believe they have more rights by maintaining the fee interest. So the compromise was they would do a 4-foot fee swap and we would obtain that, and that would clear the cloud on title. We leased that other space from OCTA, which gives you more than 20 feet to get your fire trucks and access in there. So I think those are really important points. I'm trying to think what else. I guess that's all. I think tabling it would be a mistake, but I leave that up to you.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's see. All right, we'll open up for commission discussion. And Michael?
Does council agree with that statement?
Well, in terms of the current ownership, there's been, Eric is right, there's been a lot of back and forth. There were lawsuits in the 1960s, and our record in working with the city engineer, we believe that the city owns that property outright in fee. The one thing I would also take issue with is that we worked closely with the city engineer on the staff report. The city engineer helped us, confirm the description, the findings, and so it wouldn't be fair to say that the city engineer is opposed to this. The city engineer helped review and get this together for us here today and confirmed a number of things, including whether or not this transfer would impede access, would hurt circulation, anything of that nature. So there's not dissension among the staff of this.
Okay. And then one other question. So just to be clear, there is no public access currently?
The public access, in terms of, there is public access. Like right now, that street is owned in fee and can be used. The public access, I think I'm not exactly clear about, is would be the gate, or like these actual points of public access. Playa, the street right now is owned by the city and is public, and the transfer would not impact that access there.
So the statement, I'm sorry, Mr. Chip, but the statement about the restrictive covenant on that street, is that an accurate statement? Is there a covenant on that street?
So there are probably records at some point that were showing that. There was litigation in the 1960s that dealt with a condemnation action, and there were like a whole host of other things that went on during the 1970s. Actually, I think dating back to the 1940s, right?
Where there all been cleared up. It's definitely clear on everybody's side that that is for the private and exclusive use of those units. Correct, right there. And I can show you all the exhibits to support it along with title records. Okay. Well,
the city's position, which is why we're in a position to transfer it in this manner, is that street is owned in fee by the city, and we are deeding over to Capistrano Shores that 4-foot by 325 stretch. So
should on the title of this slide, which is part of our land use plan, it says private access point. Should that be changed to a public access point?
I don't think so, because if it's talking about the access point, like where that is, maybe Gabriel can help out with this, because the path itself is public access, right? Or am I getting this part wrong here?
This is from the coastal land use plan, and so most of the other access points that are identified in this plan are public access points for the purpose of the Coastal Commission and encouraging access to the public to the shoreline. In this case, we identified this as a private because that's what we did, and there was no intent for the city to promote this for public access to the shoreline. It's currently not an access point right now for the public, and that's why it's it's memorialized that way in the LUP.
Well, I guess if we own the street, then it should be public.
There's an easement. I can, Cecilia would support that as well.
So maybe we.
So there's a restriction on our use currently, so that only city employees can use it for official purposes? Is that what it is?
That I'm not sure. I don't know if there's an easement.
So Coastal Commission does not require any access along the stretch?
No, not.
They bought off
not-
here.
But maybe because they didn't understand the characteristics of it being a public road.
It looks like looks like public access, the way the exhibit, coastal access path. It's from our LCP, right?
Is there a current easement or access easement for Capistrano Shores to be using that property? I would assume so.
Yes, exclusive.
And all we're doing is swapping it. Where now it's going to be Capistrano Shores owns it, we have the easement for accessibility of the trucks, is that correct?
No, that was one proposal, but we do have an exclusive easement, but all you're doing is shortening the width of your ownership by 4 feet to clear up any encumbrances or cloud on title. You still have your existing rights as they are today, which is all city access can get through the entrance, drive through that street, and go through the locked gate at the end to get onto the beach to maintain public services.
And let me ask the city attorney, is that your understanding of it?
Well, to just make things clear, and just to clarify things, because the transfer of the 4 feet, I'm not familiar with an easement. It's my understanding that the property is owned in fee by the city, which is how we could do the transfer. That aside, because the Capistrano Shores and the city agreed to make this transfer, so whatever background understanding that got to this point, it's, as Eric explained, and as I understand, it's very complicated. The transfer right now, I think, which Eric just explained, would not change would only give up that 4 foot by 325 stretch that we believe the city owns in fee. The remaining, it's an 8,000 square foot road, so that would leave 13 minus 1,300, so that's 6,700 square feet would remain exactly as it is today. Owned in fee by the city, cuts off right where those manufactured homes cut off. So the story of the street, it's only 8,000 square feet. It's incredibly complicated, as I'm sure a lot of roads near the coast are. But for here, I think the point of agreement and like the point in the settlement is that the transfer of just that stretch will maintain existing conditions as they are now, because it's encroached on by the homes, and the city would still retain the remainder of the street.
So the city basically owns from the east edge of those mobile homes up to the end of the street.
Correct,
the far
correct.
east. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm struggling now with my land use hat here, which is, we've got now a locked access to a public street coming off of the beach, kind of to Commissioner Wu's point when he was trying to get some clarity on the ownership of the parcels at the end, right? I think that's what you were asking about, right, Commissioner? That's now locked. We've got one party to the settlement agreement stating that the road that we're stating is ours is got restrictive covenants on it. I'm not sure that that's possible in the state of California. That sounds like another lawsuit's getting ready to boil up here, and we're settling this one and transferring something over, and the public benefit is we're settling a lawsuit. And so I'm going, So while I was hoping that we could move this, I'm now got all of these new revelations that I have to kind of consider from the land use side, putting aside the the benefit side here. I mean, if we've got, you know, I don't know if this was explored or not, but it sure sounds like we've got some conflicting views on what we have.
Well, Commissioner, if I may, I don't think the history is complicated, but I don't think there are conflicting views as to the status, because the settlement agreement provided a sample grant deed, which is the one that's attached to the staff report. And that grant deed is for the city to transfer this property that it owns in fee over to Capistrano Shores. So in order for that grant deed to be effective, Capistrano Shores Council and the City Council had to assume that the property was owned in fee. So that's the assumption in the settlement agreement. It's the assumption that we had working with Capistrano Shores Council, and it's the assumptions by which, and it's not just assumptions, it's our understanding working with the city attorney and looking over the property records. And it's how the grant deed could go forward to transfer the property.
So where is the terminus of this road? Is it onto the beach itself?
I think the terminus is just shy of the beach. So
Is the terminus on the public property?
yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Gabriel, can you flip to the next page, the previous
So the
page?
terminus of the road is onto public property?
Correct.
So
The
why is
entire
there-
stretch of the
Why
road
is there a gate with a lock on the end of that terminus road?
I do
public
not
property?
know. I do not know the answer to that. I know that Senda de la Playa, the expanse of it, is owned in fee by the city. I don't know about the gate. I don't know why there's a lock on it. I don't know exactly where that gate is relative to the city property.
You know,
Where does Senda de Playa start and end?
Senda de Playa starts, so where North El Camino Real comes down, there's a line that shows the parcel line right over to the left, up on the screen we're looking at now. So that is we'll call that the northern terminus. The southern terminus actually ends at where there's another parcel line going down to the south. It's right next to that last manufactured home there.
Okay, when you run the arrow across that thing so we can see it?
Gabriel, can you enlarge it?
Do you have the GIS?
No, it's actually down right now.
well, I think we
Just go
want
to the access point from the end, or does it go all the way to the end of the trailer park?
just as an observation here while we're looking that up, I'm kind of disturbed as you guys are in terms of the land use issue. Is this a public street and we don't have public access, that sort of a thing? But I'm not sure that's the question before us. The question before us is the transfer of title. And, not that this isn't a question that shouldn't be answered and clarified, but I'm wondering if that's kind of within our purview tonight.
Well, except for section number 2 on that, which is the transfer resolves an existing encroachment issue without in any way compromising or impacting public access to or the use of the street.
Which is to say, impacting it from what it is now. Right now, it's not allowed, right?
Well, but
So that's what I'm saying.
we're assuming that it is,
Yeah.
and now we're being told it's not.
Yeah.
One more time, where does Senda de Playa start and end? I look at these little yellow lines, and does it bend and go across the railroad track? Does it go the whole length of the trailer park to the northern end?
Right here. It's just this little tiny strip right here, so you can see where it comes in the gate. It goes up, and then it opens up and goes across, just this little tiny strip right here.
So is that your understanding of how
It's
Senda runs?
Yes, so there's a yellow line, and it shows it down here where it almost reaches the beach.
Mhm.
And there's a yellow line that shows where it hits right up against the other. So if you look, you'll see that there's the line that hits right up on the, is that 1880, Gabriel? So it's just right there. That's the expanse of it.
Maybe this will be easier to see.
So it's, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, where these manufactured homes are jutting out, 4 feet where they're jutting out, that's the only area that's being transferred.
Correct.
Right? Okay. And actually, this is Google Maps has it wrong. It says North El Camino Real.
do that
It's
all the
not-
time.
Yeah.
All right, one more time. Where does Senda Playa start? Where does it end?
So it
Starts
ends
there?
where Gabriel's mouse is, right there.
Okay, good.
And then, Gabriel, if you go up to, there's actually, so right, almost, up a little bit more. So that's the management, then, north along where it says North El Camino Real. I can actually just.
No down.
So the public has access up and down that right now.
Right up to.
I don't think they do.
Why not?
The gate's locked.
It's private.
Through.
And if you think this is a new idea to put a public access through that community, it is not the first time. It is not.
Okay, hold on.
I just want to know where the road starts and ends.
Yeah.
Reasonable question.
No, it's on the parcel map. Gabriel, if you can go back to that PDF file, you see this very light yellow line? It's a part of the public right of way. There's no boundary. The boundary goes far, far away. So if you can see that railroad crossing, the wide street, that's a public right of way, and then it's an L shape. It's become much narrower, 20 feet, all the way down to the gate. That's where Senda Playa ends. Then if you continue that,
And it
you're
starts,
onto.
it starts on the other side of the railroad tracks. It makes a 90-degree turn
Yes.
at the railroad access point.
Correct.
Right.
So it intersects with Avenida Estacio.
So once you're out of the gate, you're on the city property, because that's where the facility at the outlet is.
Yeah, that's the beach end. And then it goes up, makes a 90-degree turn, goes across the railroad tracks at the crossing. And that's a city street.
According to our council, the city owns it in fee.
Which means it's a public street with.
Correct.
And in the state of California, you can have no restrictions on a public street.
That's correct. That's our understanding, is that the city owns it in fee, which is why we're able to, should the city council approve, affect the transfer. That's one of the assumptions that Capistrano Shores council has made by, otherwise we would not be able to transfer it by deed like this.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
so now I'm putting on my hat, which is if this transfer gets accepted, we've got them accepting this, meaning that they are, and I assume we've got some reps and warrants in there that we can transfer it, and they're accepting that transfer. Would that then put us in a position to exercise our public control over that in fee and make sure that it's open to the public? If it's not, I mean, they're by virtue of taking it now, accepting that, and it's kind of like you can't have your, cake and eat it too.
Well,
or maybe you can. It just depends how good the cake is. But
our research shows that the city owns that in fee as it is today. These, I agree with the chair's direction on this of sorts, that, these questions about how the remainder of that street is used and the gate issues right now might be better addressed at another point, although completely understand how that's pertinent.
Well, let me actually kind of clarify a little bit, because I think the way this discussion is going is interesting. If Couple Shores is saying that the rest of that road, if the contention was we didn't own that road at all, and now, okay, you own most of that road, and we're going to transfer, and they're going to own the parts right under the mobile homes. And if there's no encumbrances that we have on it that we are required to respect, then that could turn that into an uncontested public access to the beach, which is a benefit to the city.
Correct.
The fact that we've got a clear way to do that is actually a significant benefit.
Yes.
So,
that would make
because that's
sense.
the first time frankly, it's the first time I've seen a clear benefit. But if that's, I'm saying that because I want to hear from you on that. You know, are we truly unencumbered? Are we not buying ourselves another lawsuit by making that assumption? Things like that.
It's our understanding that the city owes it a fee. That's why we put in the staff report. We confirmed it with the city engineer. It is absolutely fair to say that this particular stretch has a very long and complicated history.
I understand that,
we're confident that right now we own it in fee.
So
that's the simple.
So I can't say we don't have enough resolution to see what's at the end of, presumably the city's street there, Senda de la Playa. But, if there's a gate there or an opening or, a wall that Capo Shores owns right now, but now it's on city property kind of a thing, that can be removed and we can open that up for beach access.
If it's on the city property. I don't know exactly where the wall or gate sits relative to the parcel lines, but if it's on city property, then it's on city property.
So to that end, I agree with the chair that is the first real public benefit that we've heard. And how long would it, if we continue this for 1 meeting, 2 meetings, when could we get some clarity on that? I'd like to get this thing disposed of one way or the other, right? So it could go into the city council's hands. But I'd really like to know the answer to that question before we vote on this.
Which question in particular?
I'd like to know what the ownership is at the terminus of both ends.
Well, the ownership, the yellow lines marks where the city's property is. So I think the question is what is at those?
Well, no, I think there's two things. I think we'd like to know what's at those, and then also, let's confirm that we do in fact own it. It's not a public street in an island, right?
No,
but we don't have that in front of us today other than Zen's kind of partial map here. I'd like to really know that with clarity.
Okay.
And
you're just worried about access to the street.
I'm worried about access to the street and where the street terminates, right?
What difference does it make where it terminates?
Because if it terminates to public property, then that's a thoroughfare. That is a public thoroughfare. And right now it's locked. And right now it's locked, according to what I'm hearing. And so then all of a sudden I see the public benefit.
But a lock can be taken off. That's something that can be easily found out.
Well, David, let me
And I don't know if
rephrase.
he's come back. I'm almost tempted to say he knows our concerns. We're only being asked to review this and move it on. That if we say, okay, it can move on as long as the attorney addresses all these concerns we have, because a lot of them seem like they're beyond our purview.
It's
talking
determining a community benefit, but I don't disagree.
And, their big benefit and the whole reason for doing this is to protect those, 8 trailers that are encroaching on the property and putting a value to that for the assessor. If these are 60-foot deep trailers or whatever the length is, they've gained an extra 4 feet of lot and increased their property, so property value can be assessed pretty easily. And as far as the tax rolls go.
May I? David, I think, let me rephrase that. So what we want to make sure is if we were to transfer that 4-foot wide slip of land to Capuchon Shores, it will be absolutely clear that they own that in fee simple, and there's no encumbrance from the city. We want to make sure that for the rest of the right-of-way, which is the 16 feet wide, that the city absolutely have the ownership in fee simple without any encumbrance. I understand you believe that's the case, but that's not enough. We want you in that settlement to have the opponent, to have the opposing counsel to recognize that. Is that a part of the settlement?
Well, the settlement itself has already been executed by the city council. So the settlement itself is really not the settlement itself is not really up for discussion at this point, because it's been executed by the city council, and this action and the zoning amendment action are conditions of that settlement. But I do want to say, if I may, that I was just looking on the property records that I have, and if I may point to the screen here. So this is the stretch that, this is Senda de la Playa, which our records show, we've worked with the city engineer, the city owns it in fee simple. This property right here, this parcel according to county records, this is also owned by the city of San Clemente. This, let's see.
And what about the sand between there?
This parcel right here, also owned by the city of San Clemente. I don't know as you get down this way, but right here, this is we'll call it the southern terminus of Senda de la Playa. It joins with another parcel that's owned by the city. And then this lot right here is also owned by the city.
And I see cars that are parked there. I mean, are they allowed to park on the street like that? I guess it's just a very narrow street and there's parking off to the side.
I checked with the city engineer about that, and it's my understanding that, yes, that is a place where cars can park. Are you talking about right over here?
Yeah, I like it striped for parking, and that's...
I don't know if it's striped for parking, but there is allowable parking there.
But the city could change their mind about that.
Correct.
If they own that.
No. Capistrano leased that land from OCTA.
Oh, this up here, north of...
Okay, that's
yes.
OCTA.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
So that's stripped right there, okay.
That's right, yes, exactly.
Except for the 4 feet, yeah.
You got it, that's correct.
So let me make sure I understand the settlement agreement, the parts that you can discuss.
Yeah.
They have agreed as a settlement of the lawsuit to accept a transfer of land from the city that we own in fee simple. They acknowledge that we own it in fee simple and are transferring it to them in fee simple, and they have agreed to accept that in fee simple. It sounds like a waiver, doesn't it? You're nodding your head. The cameras can't keep.
A wait.
That sounds like a waiver that it's not fee.
Well, that it's not fee?
Yeah.
A waiver that it's not fee. Yes, in order to effectuate the deed, the city has to be transferring something that they own in fee.
Right.
In this case, so
and they're accepting that, which means
Correct.
they acknowledge that we own it in fee. Well, that sounds, and given the information you've stated here,
I'm actually,
I'm kind of excited now.
Yeah, at this point, I'm pretty good with it, yeah.
So I'll make a motion that we approve. What's the darn resolution number? Is there a resolution? I don't think there is.
Yes, there is a resolution.
Is there, sorry.
Just attach that.
Yeah. Resolution PC 19037, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of San Clemente, California regarding a transfer of 4 by 325 foot, 1,300 square foot portion of Senda La Playa to the Capistrano Shores Mobile Home Park, recommending that the City Council determine that the transfer is of the common benefit, determine that the transfer conforms to the city's general plan, determine that the transfer is categorically exempt from an environmental review under CEQA as a Class 5 project, direct staff to file a notice of exemption, and direct staff to execute and record the grant deed effectuating the transfer.
Make sure the taxes are processed.
I would add to the resolution with a statement at the end on the Planning Commission recommendation. I would recommend number 5, to direct staff to inform the Orange County assessor about the transfer and the imputed additional significant value to each of the landowners, or to the landowner.
I don't know if we can direct staff, we can recommend it, or...
It's a Planning Commission recommendation, which is to direct.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so that's number 5. And then number 6 would be to direct staff to inquire about the potential of utilizing the public property that is owned by the city in fee to make that a public access and to ensure that the public use of the public land is unrestricted.
Second. Motion by Jason, second by Bart. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. Next is old business. There is none. Reports of commissioners and staff. Does anyone have any reports?
Just that I will be out of town at the next meeting. And I provide
You're going to do Larson and trip the other direction?
I'm going to Hawaii to recover.
I was there at the Pier Bowl, and I paid for it by watching 5 hours of video.
Chairman, just one thing to add. Also, there will be a Planning Commission study session at the next meeting. We'd like to start at 5 o'clock. The purpose of that would be kind of the continuation of that workshop that we had on small cell facilities. At that workshop, we would present the draft ordinance that is being considered right now and drafted by staff. Also, we'll have an expert in RF admissions present to be able to explain how that works, because I know there's been a lot of questions, as you saw today, from the public or concern about RF admissions and what those impacts could be from small cell facilities. So we anticipate that might take about 2 hours, considering there's probably be interest from the public to make comment. And so I just want to let you know. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I will mention, I'll point out on December 17th, there's two Mills Act applications that are going to be going through City Council. I was a little surprised, and then I realized Design Review had looked at those. I guess they go directly from Design Review to City Council, right? So we don't see those. I will just kind of put it out there, and something that I've been playing a little phone tag with Jonathan, but I've gotten a couple calls, and I've gotten a little bit of a concern about maybe some differences in the way that we are looking at our Mills Act applications versus how we've done it in the past. There's the biggest concern is seismic retrofitting that is being recommended to people, which can be expensive, and usually we focused on our Mills Act stuff on view from the public corridor of these things. So it's not, I'm not trying to raise any alarm bells or anything. I'm more just kind of informing people, and I'm going to be following up with Jonathan, and just to see if there's, if maybe we are sort of changing our perspective or anything a little bit. There's some reading I need to do in the general plan in terms of how we decided to handle that, and if we're maybe, just make sure we're kind of in line with that. So I apologize, I just didn't have time to get into a lot of the details before this meeting. Pardon me?
Did we cover the Mills Act in the general plan?
There's historic resources element. So it's not specifically Mills Act, but it's like how we handle historic resources, which would affect how we might do some of our Mills Act applications. So just something I wanted to bring up to people and let Gabriel know, but it's, I'll talk to Jonathan first and kind of do some research and see if we might be shifting a little bit, and if we are, is that something we want to do or not? That might be a planning commission discussion at some point, so. Anything else for reports? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, and we do have a different adjournment text here for whoever wants to.
I'll make a motion to adjourn to the next adjourned regular study session planning commission meetings to be held on November the 20th, 2019 at 5:00 p.m. in the council chambers located at 100 Avenida Presidio, San Clemente, California. Somebody second.
Second? Motion by Jason, second by Michael. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Whew.